The bliss of ignorance. What you don't know, often people say, can't hurt you. That's not entirely true. But what I will say is, what you don't know, often people don't feel they're responsible for. This is why we leave medical stuff to doctors, right? And that's why they go through so much training, because they know that stuff, right? That's why we leave politics to politicians. Pick your poison as far as employment. I've always believed that knowledge is power. Today, this morning, I woke up to my father talking about RFK going to Starbucks and yelling at them about how much sugar they put in their coffees. Now, for example, they use syrups, and syrups are super saturated amounts of sugar. Essentially require heat to create syrup, and it condenses it into a liquid, essentially, through, well, yeah. What I really want to get into as far as that is, that's absolutely true. There's like 50 to 100 grams of sugar in those drinks, and people drink them every day and wonder why they can't lose weight. But with that being said, ignorance is bliss, right? You enjoy that little fix, and you enjoy sugar. Sugar is an addictive substance, and you are unaware that it is harming you to the degree that it is. Therefore, it is enjoyable. If you had the knowledge of how much it was harming you, you wouldn't partake, or you'd partake less. I think equally so, there's a time variable to it. I am feeling bad, and therefore I need this now. I think similarly, you could go with like nicotine. That's the most addictive substance in the world. I feel bad when I don't have it. Alcohol. If you're addicted to alcohol, I feel bad when I don't have alcohol. You know it's hurting you, but you don't know to what extent. You can't take a look inside the liver with your own eyes and see the damage it does. Ignorance is bliss in that sense. I think rather it should be phrased, there is bliss in ignorance. People die every day in the world, but you don't see it, and so therefore you don't see the atrocities. We try to hide the atrocities. We try to rationalize why these atrocities happen, because we perceive that we don't have any control over it. I think that's the fallacy. We do have control over it, and you giving up your control is blissful. I would also like to state that with the perceived responsibility or control, that would require a concerted effort or work done on your part to then act upon that. And, we just would rather not do that. We're simple beings. If we don't have to do something, we won't do it. It tends to be a problem, at least as for I see. It is a huge problem. This is why we have an obesity epidemic in the United States of America. This is why we have such a drug issue within America, is because we are all so self-consumed and ignorant. And we pride ourselves on our ignorance, blind loyalty, you know? Like patriotism, for example. I'm very patriotic, but on the foundations of what this nation was built upon, freedom, freedom, just freedoms in general. Check out John Locke, and what it means essentially to be human and the freedoms we have as being human. I think this is part of the reason religion is such a huge thing in the world, is the fact that, we could attribute anything and everything that's out of our control to a higher power and say that it's part of God's plan. It may be. I couldn't tell you if it's not or if it isn't. But I do believe that we are part of God's plan, but that doesn't mean our actions, each action that we have is a part of God's plan. You know, us being his creation, yeah, obviously, you know, he wouldn't have necessarily created us if it wasn't planned, you know, it was just an accident. I don't believe that. Um, Furthermore, I would like to get back into the responsibility. You know, if I'm responsible for my own plight and my own problems, um, I can't play the victim, you know, and I can't blame anything else. But in order to accept that I would be that problem, I would have to take ignorance out of the equation, you know. I can say, oh, I'm in pain. I don't know why I'm in pain. I punched a wall. I'm in pain. I don't know why I'm in pain, you know. And now it's not my fault that I punched a wall. It's the wall's fault for causing me this pain, you know, or whatever. Or it's just I'm in pain and I need to deal with it. You know, it's completely reactive instead of proactive. I think that is the key to it. That's my video. Thank you. May God bless. Much love. Adios.